Welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. My name is Audrey Monkey, and I am your host. For more information and notes about this podcast, visit my website at sunshine-parenting.com. In this episode of the Sunshine Parenting Podcast, I'll be interviewing Camp Director Sara Kuljis from Yosemite Sierra Summer Camp. She has more than 20 years experience as a camp owner and director, and a lot more experience in camp as she grew up at the camp her parents founded 44 years ago. She has a keen interest in youth development and also has experience working in an inner city ballet youth development organization. She teaches parenting workshops all over Southern California and is one of my close friends and fellow camp directors whom I love to talk to. So I'm really excited to have her with me today to talk about a topic that we both are really excited about. So first of all, Sara, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. This is really, really fun to be here and to collaborate about things we care so much about.
Yes, I'm really excited. We're here in person together. So this is not one of my recorded phone calls like my previous interviews. So this is really extra fun to be here with Sara. So Sara, one of the topics that you and I talk about a lot is how camp experiences we think contribute to kids' development of both independence and resilience. So I want to kind of talk about that today with you and hear your thoughts on just why you think camp impacts kids so well in that area.
Well, I think initially my confidence in how camp builds those skills in young adults, young people, is just from my own experience. As a child who went to a number of different kinds of camps, I could see that I was changing each time. I would make friends with someone very different than myself. I would try an activity I had never tried, and that built a transferable confidence. And then as I became a parent and ultimately a camp director, we get to see it daily, time and time again. Probably, though, the most vivid example most recently for me is that I had the enormous pleasure and angst at sending my oldest off to college this last fall. And as Nick headed off for his freshman year, several states away, I got to experience what it was like to trust that what we provided as a family and what he developed at his experiences at camp would be enough to sustain him.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things a lot of parents are finding is that when their kids go to college, it's not an easy transition. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you've heard some of the statistics, but it sounds like there's kind of a high number of kids who, after all this effort's been put into this application process and getting into some, prestigious school, they get there and really have trouble with the adjustment. And a lot of it has to do with just being in a new place and being away from home. Are you finding that among, some of your peers, they're having that same experience?
We are seeing that a lot, and it's a heartbreak. So many families that we know, whether through our own school or through camp, as you said, that enormous effort to get into that school. And once there, this young person really struggles to succeed and certainly to thrive. I have seen that when fit was the more important choice in the college rather than perhaps the prestige or the reputation, those who found the right fit are succeeding and thriving. Also, those who haven't been away who've never been away before, we see them thriving. And for Nick, in particular, we dropped him off at Boulder in Colorado University in Boulder, and as he walked for the last time into that 15-story dorm, I said one more time, "Hey, do you feel ready?" And he goes, "Mom, I got this." And later that week, we unpacked what that meant. And certainly he knows how to do his laundry. He knows how to be a good roommate. He has great study habits. He knows how to handle money. All those things that we built into him. But one thing he said was really helpful is, "Mom, I've gone away before. And I'm quiet and it takes me a while, but I really make good friends." And he knew that about himself because he had done it time and time again. And we figured he's going to be just fine. And by the way, he's so happy he doesn't probably ever need to come home again. He is just loving it. The team
great.
he's on is are becoming brothers. The fraternity he pledged brings him great joy. And for some crazy reason, he loves his engineering classes. So, I'm a happy mom.
That's so great. Yeah. So he obviously is doing very well in terms of the adjustment that a lot of kids sometimes have. So when you think about, like, I know as camp directors, we both have the same experience where people will say something like, oh, I just don't know if fill in the blank name of their child is ready for camp yet. And I'm just curious. I know what I answer to that question when someone says, for example, their 12 or 13-year-old is not ready to be away from them for a couple weeks. How would you like to address that? How do you answer that question with parents? Because I think it's an important one. You know, you even said your son's more on the quiet side, takes a little while to adjust. So maybe people wouldn't perceive him as being the kind of kid that just is raring to go to camp. So what would you say to that parent who has a child who's, say, 12 years old and they're worried that he or she is not ready for camp? How would you address that?
Well, often I'll ask, what does it look like to you, mom or dad, for your child to be ready? And kind of unpacking their measure of readiness. It helps when we remind ourselves as parents that it takes uncomfortableness and challenge to grow. So the question isn't, I never want her to be homesick, but does she have the tools that when she's a little homesick, she's going to be able to tackle it? And then the conversation changes. Most times, though, and Audrey, you know this, we find that a parent will say, you know, it's probably me who's not ready. And that's also a really wonderful conversation to have as parents. How do we want to equip our kids? When is it time? And for us, we have to go through some challenge and uncomfortableness also to grow.
Right. And don't you think there's a little bit of that element that you're excited for your child to do these things and go on these adventures, but at the same time, it's sort of a loss for you because you're losing having your kid with you at home. So I think there's some element for, like, especially when you think about young kids who come to camp, when people think about, wow, my 8-year-old can be okay for a couple weeks without me. I think that's something a parent needs to deal with also.
There is some loss in that, I think. And I have felt this way before and heard it from other parents that we had to let go of that deep joy that I get to see my child doing everything for the first time. But my child needs to know that I don't have to be there for him to get up on water skis or for her to make a new friend or for him to brush himself off and try again. Because if he thinks I need to be there every time, then what is he going to do when I'm not there? So there's some letting go and there's some loss.
That's such a good point. And don't you also feel that almost there are some things that they won't try when you're there?
Oh,
that
absolutely.
They do. Like, I've seen that. I'm sure you've seen the same thing. Kids who parents say, oh, he'll never try water skiing or rock climbing. And then we see them doing that. And it's like they've gained this confidence almost because in addition to being away from home and at camp, they have this feeling, wow, I can do this. Now I can do this. And it kind of translates to other things.
Absolutely. I'm even dazzled by the bravery of my own children or the wisdom of my own children or the tenacity of my own children. I sometimes underestimate them. And, you know, not that we don't all make mistakes, and there's been plenty of those. But how fun that I get to be dazzled when I hear away from me, my son did that or my daughter did that. I see it a lot with the power play over picky eaters.
Definitely, yes.
Kiddos who go off to camp often eat a broader array of foods because mom and dad aren't there worrying about it or pushing it. That certainly was my experience with one of my kids.
Wow.
He came home eating all manner of fabulous things, and it was because I wasn't there when he got to try.
There's not that resistance that they kind of build up over many years. You know, like, I don't eat vegetables or whatever it is. And
nothing green.
Yes, I've had that. I've had a few parents tell me that their child came home liking salad.
Yes.
And I think it's because they're watching their counselor eat salad and they're kind of in this environment where they're like, well, maybe I should just try this and check it out.
And mealtime should be a happy, pleasant time, not the time to get grilled on, how was school today and what did you do wrong and did you get an A? You know, mealtime at camp is, what did we learn and what did we do? And And how are we building these friendships?
Oh gosh, that's so, so good. So I think just circling back to that are you ready question. I've had this thought, thinking about my own life, that, whenever you're doing something new, who is actually ready? You know what I mean?
A great observation.
I think we have this weird thing, like even asking that question, are you ready? The answer is pretty much always no, for ourselves and our kids. So if we're talking about whether it's going to camp or going to college or going to this new team that is more challenging, whatever it is, almost like when you say, are you ready? You're really not, because you don't even know yet what is going to be coming. But the way we get ready is by going out there and just doing it. Do you see that kind of?
I would agree. It's almost like, am I ready enough? Mm-hmm. And by adding the enough there, it gives me a little grace. Mm-hmm. I do need certain tools in my back pocket.
Right.
But unless I try, I don't know.
Right.
And in our sweet effort to protect our kids from things that are challenging or hard or lonely, or whatever, we actually limit their opportunity to get to be fully ready. I love in Wendy Mogul's first book, Blessing of a Skinned Knee, she says, as parents, we never want our kids to be hungry, tired, cold, or lonesome. But if our kids are never hungry, tired, or cold, they're never going to be an adult.
Right, because that's part of life.
And so it's, are they ready enough? Well, son, when you miss home, let's role play what we're going to do.
Right.
Daughter, when you have to select your own clothing to wear every day at camp, show me what you might choose.
Right.
And me as a mom, I need to let that creative ensemble go.
And also, I think help them build, express that confidence. I always say that to parents too. Even for, maybe especially for the parent who has a child who's more anxious and is nervous about it. I think it's so important if parents just say, hey, you know what? Yeah, this might be hard, but I know you can do it. Let's role play. Let's talk about who there might you ask for help if you're, feeling like you are feeling sad or can't find something.
Right.
And just sort of expressing our own confidence in them, even if on the inside we are a little bit nervous that this is going to be hard. And like you said, I think that's so true, that they need to feel that uncomfortable time. One of the things I think is funny about camp, and your camp is very much like mine, that it's pretty rustic, and it's there's some parts that are uncomfortable. I think of backpacking as being one of those times that really stretches kids.
Sure.
And so when you think about backpacking, how do you think that helps contribute to kids kind of gaining more resilience or independence? How do you think that works at camp?
That's it. It's of our variety of activities, it's one of the ones that feels most other than or scary to new campers. And what we want to do is alleviate their fear, so their energy goes into being successful rather than managing their fear. So helping a child answer their questions. Tell me what feels different or new or scary or anxious to you. And having a kiddo really name what they're worried about. If it's, well, what if I'm the slowest one? What if I get last in the line? What a great question. When I was a kiddo, I actually was a few times the last one in the line. I remember that. And the good thing to know is there's always going to be a staff member right behind you or right with you. So you will never be alone, and it's going to be okay. I was there before. Kind of reassuring, naming all those things. And saying that it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be really tired. It's okay to not always like going uphill. You don't have to be macho. This isn't something you get an A in. But we are going to see part of nature that very few people see. And you are going to build friendships that you never knew you could because you needed each other. And you're going to have to, often I'll say, trust me on this. In 3 days when I see you, I'm going to ask you these 3 questions. I can't wait for you to tell me what you loved, what was challenging, and if you did it, when you go again, what will you do differently? And then really sending them off and knowing they're going to be okay.
Yeah. Wait, that was so good, Sarah. Those 3 questions I feel like you could use as a parent just in life. So what were the 3 questions that you want? And you could think about this with any experience that our kids have that is hard. So any kind of challenging thing, trying out for a team they're scared to do, taking some tests that's hard, dealing with an interpersonal thing. So what were the 3 questions?
What did you love?
What did you
or
love?
Enjoy?
Okay.
What was challenging?
What was challenging?
And then when, not if, when you do it again, what will you do differently?
Okay, when you do it again, what will you do differently? I think that is so brilliant and so helpful. And this is yet another example, I think, of how the things that we do at camp as camp counselors and, when we're working with the kids, so many of them, I think, are really applicable at home.
Absolutely.
Too. And that's why you and I have so much in common about those kind of the things that we've learned about youth development and taught our counselors, and then go back and use in our own families. And I think that's really, I love how anytime I talk to you, you give me these ideas of of things that I can try both at my own camp and at home. So
I think that's
brilliant.
Mutual. Yeah. I think that's mutual.
So fun. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up, but I did want to ask you just a couple things. First of all, we talked earlier about how you do some speaking and teaching to parent groups. And I think that sort of came out of all the things that you've learned about and trained your staff and staff at the different programs that you operate. So what are some of your favorite topics to talk about and teach parents?
That's a great question. I since my parents were camp directors and I watched them train staff all through the years, I saw them transferring their parenting skills to our young staff, who then got to be parents at camp. And so when I found myself in this role as a camp director, really what we did is reverse engineered what is the ideal staff member? What parenting skills would we love for them to have down so they can most enhance the learning of our campers? And so some of my favorite topics, and I share this at PTAs and churches and parenting groups, as well as certainly with our staff, are positive behavior shaping techniques. That balance of really clear boundaries, but also warm encouragement. Effective affirmation rather than false praise or debilitating praise. I love talking about the pace of life and how we want to be intentional so that children do have downtime, personally directed playtime, and time for reflection. And then also listening skills is a big one as well. As a parent, I always catch myself talking all the time. And some of my favorite parents and certainly my favorite staff members are listeners.
Yes. A lost art.
That's a lost art
these days. Oh my gosh. Yes. Okay. That is so good. Well, I'm so excited to participate in more of your classes that you have to offer and some of the things you're sharing. I'm going to put a link with information of how to contact Sara if you're interested in having her come talk to your group, because I think she has so much very valuable information, and she's a very dynamic trainer when she speaks to people. So you'll really enjoy having Sara come to your group, and she can share some of her wisdom that she has about youth development. So that'll be really fabulous. Okay, so one last topic, and then we'll kind of close off this podcast. What parenting books or books have you read recently, or do you have any favorites that you maybe keep going back to? You mentioned Wendy Mogul's book, which I also love. Are there any other books that you've kind of come across that you think other parents might really enjoy?
One of my favorites in the last year was How to Raise an Adult.
Oh, yes.
To the point where I made my entire staff read it.
Wow, and that's a long one.
And some of them don't even have children yet, but I knew they would be wiser camp staff and camp leaders if they had read it. So that's a fave. And then right now I'm reading Present Over Perfect.
Oh gosh, I love that one too.
Love it. Devouring it.
Yes.
Losing sleep because I'm staying up too late, wanting to finish it. And again, that idea that when mama's happy, the family's happy, right?
Yes.
But just am I making the wise decisions about the pace of my own personal life and being really attentive and present and enjoying all those little sweet things, so that as I'm guiding my own kids or guiding my staff, that we aren't missing the important stuff.
Oh gosh, that's so good. I do. I love both of those. Are great recommendations. So
what are you reading now?
I'll put notes on those on the podcast. Let's see. The funny thing that I'm reading right now, I am still reading Daniel Goleman's Social Intelligence, which is just about interpersonal skills. But the other thing that I picked up is it's called The Opposite of Spoiled by Ron Lieber. And he is a financial writer for the New York Times.
Oh my goodness.
And it's all about teaching your kids about managing money. and learning about money. And so far, the part I've read, it's so ringing true for me, is that we are all really weird about talking about money. No matter what amount people have, it's hard to know how to address issues like your child wants something, and maybe they know you can afford it. So how do you explain to them why you're still not going to buy it for them? So it's been very informative already, just in terms of how we teach our kids about budgeting, and I'm learning more about how we want to keep giving our kids more and more financial responsibility. And I tried it this year. We were, at camp. We're busy at the end of the summer. So I didn't have time to help my kids get their stuff ready for school. I was busy at work. So I actually gave them $500, which sounds like a lot. And it was for all of their clothes, their haircut, their like paper goods, like school supplies.
That's brilliant.
Anything else, shoes, everything they needed to start the year. Like if they needed a calculator for their math class. And I just said, this is your budget. Figure out.
Brilliant.
And this is the first time I've done that, but it's been leading me to think down kind of the whole, like, what are they supposed to pay for themselves, and how do I teach them to make these good choices? Anyway, so that's what I'm reading on my and just continuing quest to figure out how to do this better.
Wonderful.
Anyway, thank you so much for being with me today, Sarah.
It was a delight. Thanks for having me.
And I will put show notes and links to contact Sarah and all the books we mentioned and everything else we've talked about today. And definitely want to have you back because we have a lot more topics to talk about here.
I'd be happy to come.
Thank you so much for joining me for episode 3 of the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. I really enjoyed my conversation with Sarah and all the topics that we covered, and you can find our show notes about everything we talked about at sunshine-parenting.com. I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite quotes from Shauna Niequist's Present Over Perfect. What I can do is offer myself, wholehearted and present, to walk with the people I love through the fear and the mess. That's all any of us can do. That's what we're here for.